Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Okay, so they're making way, but have been told to make way. So let's get a little bit into that. Yes, it's the warm-up episode 118. It's Brady. We are Tomless for our Coventry preview. However, we are joined by BBC Radio Leeds' very own Katherine Hannah. Katherine, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I'm no Tom, but I'll do my best.
Oh, it's all right. You know, you can. There's a thing is too much Tom sometimes. I think he can that himself. But good to have you on.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Nice to reverse it, and you know me.
I know it's weird, isn't it? It's normally me asking the questions. So this is a very, very uncharted territory for me. It's normally me grilling you about things rather than the other way around. So I will do my best.
Yes, I'm ready to get my revenge, shall we say? No, so it's an interesting one, this one, because obviously we're going to preview the Coventry game, but we are recording the day after that pesky midweek game against Stoke, and it was a bit of a significant one, Neil Warnock's last game. So we're going to mix up the format a little bit to how we normally do, because as mentioned, it was Neil Warnock's last game as his second spell as Huddersfield Town manager. So yeah, just about that game, it was 2-2. It was very chaotic, is how I describe it. So Katherine, I know obviously you were at the pre-match presser, but it was, you know, from all accounts, it was a bit of a crazy game. Do you think that's a fitting end to Neil Warnock's tenure?
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? It's always a shame that they didn't kind of go and get like the last minute winner. That's the fairy tale ending, isn't it? You kind of say goodbye to Neil Warnock off the back of a 3-2 win and he sails off with Ronnie Jepson into the sunset. Sadly not to be. In some ways, I was listening to the post-match reaction on BBC Radio Leeds last night, and I think a couple of people made the point, maybe in some ways, not so much for Neil Warnock, but for whoever is going to get the job, it's maybe a good thing that it ended on a draw and ended in a way that people can look at it and go, well, he did a fantastic job. There is still work to do. You know what I mean? Rather than it being like 3 wins on the bounce and everybody then particularly is like, why are we getting rid of this guy? You know, it just kind of gives a little bit more wiggle room, bit of maneuver for whoever comes in next to things to work on and things still to improve.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. I went to the game last night and we were coming out, and I think that pressure of saying goodbye to someone who's got 3 wins on the spin and then ahead of Coventry, I think it does really add to that pressure. And you're absolutely right. I think, you know, at half time it was 1-1. I think Huddersfield were maybe lucky for it to be 1-1. I had Stoke threatened quite a lot. I had a couple of goals ruled out for offside. And yeah, it kind of certainly highlighted the cracks maybe in the team, and the reason I suppose we brought Neil back in the first place, you know, all those months ago. But Katherine, obviously you were at the last pre-match presser for Neil. It was a bit of an interesting one, obviously, because there was loads of rumours going into it. How was that? Because I'd be really keen to see what it was like in the press room.
You always know it's going to be a big one. 2 reasons. One, suddenly loads of people that you never normally see rock up. Normally it's me or somebody else from BBC Radio Leeds. Stephen Chicken, obviously from The Examiner. Leon Wobshaw normally joins us on Zoom, the Yorkshire Post, and maybe 1 or 2 other people on Zoom. That's about it. You know it's going to be a big press conference when you walk in the room and there's loads of cameras there and loads of people that you're like, oh, I've not seen you before. Suddenly there is a whole load of interest. The second thing that you know it's going to be a big one, we get biscuits. This doesn't normally happen at a regulation press conference. They always treat us very nicely, I must say, at Huddersfield Town. But when you go in and there's a little station set up with tea and biscuits and coffees, we even had some sticky toffee pudding, like sponge cake there as well. I got a mint Viscount out of it on Monday. So again, you kind of know, right, this is going to be a big deal when you know it's all laid out there for everybody to put us all in a good mood. It was fascinating. And I will really miss Neil Warnock from the point of view that his press conferences are always fascinating. There is never a dull moment. He talked for, I think it went on for about 50 minutes altogether. The vast majority of the questions answered by Neil Warnock, a few obviously put to the chief exec, Jake Edwards, as well. But it's trying to listen and trying to read the body language and think, okay, this is what's being said. What do you actually mean? Which are not necessarily the same things. And I think the big things to come out of it for me, very much keen to stress Neil Warnock that he is not retiring. Absolutely not. If anything, this has given him more fire in his belly for his next job, wherever that may be. That he's in great health. He was also very quick to quash that rumour. He's not leaving because of his age or that he's health problems or that he's tired or any of that. And most importantly, that as far as he was concerned, it was a big shock to the system. And that was echoed, if you heard the pre-match interview yesterday on BBC Radio Leeds with Ronnie Jepson, who also said this decision has come to as a shock to both of them, the timing of it, which then makes you think of a load of other questions about, well, why is it a shock to come now rather than maybe at Christmas time? They'd signed the deal till the end of the season. What's gone on to kind of hasten this departure quicker than clearly Neil Warnock or Ronnie Jepson were expecting? So, there's going to be some interesting things coming up, I think, over the next few days.
No, definitely. And, at risk of putting you on the spot here, obviously you cover Huddersfield quite a lot. I mean, what do you kind of make of it all? Because, it is, I suppose, from our perspective, Neil obviously did that fantastic job last season. I wasn't sure he was going to stay on for a year, and I didn't really know the incentive for him. And then, we get this year deal, and then suddenly he's gone, 6-7 games after the season started. Yeah,
it's a funny one. I'll be honest, I was really surprised that he agreed to come back in the first place. I thought it was very much like you've ended on this massive high. You've saved the club from relegation. You've done this phenomenal job. Thank you and goodbye. The takeover goes through, is approved. Clean slate, start again. Clearly that's not been the case, and he agreed to come back, which to say was a huge surprise. And then the timing of it this time, because all right, after a difficult start to the season, he's got his team in place, he's got through the transfer window. Quite how much argy-bargy has gone on during that period, we're not entirely sure. But he's got his squad together. He was starting to pick up some results. And then all of a sudden, it's like the rug being pulled out a little bit, isn't it? Going, oh, right, thank you very much. See you later. We've got the next person lined up. And I'm surprised at the timing of it. And I think the club have put themselves under a lot of pressure now. This appointment has got to be right, because you have made the decision to call time on a manager who is hugely popular, has been really successful, seemed to be starting to get the squad together. They were clearly playing for him. And now it's fresh start. Big call. Big call.
It is. And obviously, I don't think Town fans will mind me saying we can be a bit of a pessimistic bunch at times. Let's be honest, though, we haven't had a lot in the last couple of seasons to be optimistic about. I mean, obviously, Jake Edwards say it was more about a position of strength to do this. And like you mentioned, it's a big call. Would you, I suppose that's a bit of refreshing to what we've normally seen, if you want to play devil's advocate and say, yeah, we are kind of in a good place. Things are getting sorted out behind the scenes. So do you think there is any positive to that? Or is it, we talk so much about momentum in football and how, that can really you can build on it. And it seems a bit weird to kind of cut it just as we've had that difficult period, and it appears like they were going on a bit of a run as a team.
Yeah, they just must be really, really confident that they've got the person that they want. I'm going to say person rather than man. I think it will be a male manager that takes over, but you never know these days. They must just be absolutely convinced that they have got the person that they want. Jake Edwards talked about this 3-year plan, as you say, 3-year plan to get them back in the Premier League, that they have felt that they must strike while the iron's hot and make sure this person doesn't slip through their fingers, because the last thing you want is to kind of hang fire till Christmas. They've got this name, they're available, and then suddenly you see them pop up in another job and the opportunity is gone. So from the club's point of view, if they're confident that they've got the right person, it's just then reading into it, well, why is that person available now? Why weren't they available in the summer? And then that kind of leads you to question, right, okay, well, who's been in a job, who's been out of a job, who's currently still in a job, because that rules out for me a couple of the names that have been floating around. If they're expecting to make an announcement before the Coventry game, surely it's got to be somebody who is not currently in work for whatever reason, because the complications of that, of getting somebody out of their current position and into this new one, well, all of that takes time, doesn't it? So it must be somebody who is ready and available to go right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, definitely won't happen. But just, I would love it if there was a heel turn from Mark Robbins on. He just crossed his dugout on Monday for the game. That'd be interesting. But yeah, we've talked a little bit about Neil in the future. I'll just want to, because again, I think that's the thing. As soon as Neil was announced as stepping down, obviously focus shifts to who's the next man, or woman to take charge. But I was looking at Neil's stats because obviously yourselves at BBC Radio Leeds, you put a little stat out. So his Neil Warnock stats since being appointed for the second time at Huddersfield Town: 23 games, 9 wins, 7 draws, 8 losses, 33 league points, 29 goals scored, 35 goals conceded. I mean, Katherine, that's brilliant. Particularly, I know we have short memories in football, but if you just think where we were after Mark Fotheringham was kind of dismissed, it's incredible, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's an absolutely phenomenal achievement, and even Neil Warnock said himself that of all the promotions that he's achieved and all the clubs that he's saved from relegation, keeping Huddersfield Town in the Championship last season is right up there, if not the top achievement of his career. Because, I'll be honest, I watched a lot of Huddersfield Town last season, and at periods you just thought, I just don't see how they're getting out of this. And then Neil Warnock is brought in, and it's just that mindset change. And although the start was difficult, he's referred to that himself a couple of times, back-to-back 4-0 defeats. Knives were out in some quarters. He's a dinosaur. He can't do the job, all of that. He's very aware of what people say about him. But to turn that around at the end of last season, given that he walked into a very difficult situation, a team that really needed to be pulled together. It's the man management side of things. That's so much of his success. And to be able to pull that team together, he wasn't able to bring in any new faces. It's like, right, this is what you've got. You've got however many games to save us. And the fact that he did that with a game to spare, no less, it's just an incredible achievement. And whatever you think of Neil Warnock, huge credit to the guy for being able to pull off that, because it's a miracle that he managed to get that sorted out in the amount of time that he had to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, do you think it's one of them where we'll appreciate it more the more time passes? Like obviously we talk about how everything's new and we need so much more information in terms of football, but as the kind of distance goes from that, we'll kind of appreciate how big a job that was.
Yeah, very much so. And I think as well, when you kind of look at teams who have fallen into League One, it's incredibly difficult to get out of that division. And you do kind of wonder, it's sliding doors moments, isn't it? Neil Warnock arrives, he manages to keep Huddersfield Town in the Championship. Can you imagine a scenario where Neil Warnock had not arrived and Huddersfield Town were now in League One? Goodness knows only know who the manager would be. I can't imagine that it would still be Mark Fotheringham at this point. But just trying to get out of that division is really, really hard. I mean, you just ask Derby County fans, Sheffield Wednesday fans, how long it's taken them to get out of League One. Ipswich, likewise. So, yeah, that's a pretty terrifying prospect. And I think the further down the line we go, should Huddersfield Town go on and be successful this season, and as the owners are saying, they've got a 3-year plan now to get in the Premier League, that will be a real watershed moment in the club's history, potentially, that you look back and go, thank goodness it was building from a position in the Championship rather than building from a position in League One.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to, like you say, it is a huge risk. And for me, it was funny because Neil actually revealed that first, didn't he? And I think, Jake maybe was like, oh, yeah, no, that is the plan, but maybe that wasn't the time to say it. But, from the fan perspective, for me, I think that's, it's bold. And you have to say, I think at Town previously, we've maybe lacked ambition in some senses. I think since we were relegated from the Premier League, at times it's felt like we're quite happy being a lower mid-table team. So it's good to have ambition. I just, like you say, it's a hell of a call, really, to get rid of Neil, who's obviously the most experienced probably manager you can ask for in this division. And target of three years to get back into the Premier League. I feel like it's putting a big target on the back. It's a lot of pressure if this doesn't go wrong. We saw with Phil Hodgkinson how he had grand plans and people used his words against him. So I'm not trying to create any drama where there's not, but I think it's a big like you say, it's a big call. This, and I'm sure we'll find out in the coming days who replaces him.
Yeah, that's it. It means, as you say, that the club, Kevin Nagle as the owner, people will remember what's been said because it never goes away. It's in print, it's on record, it's on radio. People can look back in 3 years' time and go, hang on a second, back in September 2023, you said this. And either everybody goes, fantastic, you delivered 2026 and Huddersfield Town are in the Premier League, happy days. Or they look back and go, well, what was all that about? Because you made this promise and you haven't delivered on it. So it's a really big call. And that is going to be reflected not only in the next managerial appointment, but also in the backing that the club gets and some of the bigger picture things that they're doing as well in terms of bringing the academy system, getting that back up and running as well. And, they're very also clear on wanting to continue and build those bridges within the community, make the match day experience a bigger thing. These are all, it's great to have these big things. And as you say, as a fan, you want ambition. You want to believe that the people leading your club have got the best intentions and have got really big plans for it. You don't want to be, as you say, just kind of happy to be 17th in the championship every season. Where's the fun in that? But it does mean that, you've got to follow it through. You can't make a claim like that, or you can't set out an intention like that and then not at least show signs that you are wanting to deliver on it. It's just one of those, isn't it? Time will tell. Time will tell whether this kind of statement is foolish or otherwise. I would like to think not. I would like to think they can show clear signs of progress and deliver on what they're saying. And that starts with the manager.
Oh, definitely. And I think if you want to be positive about it, I've been really encouraged what they're doing behind the scenes. I think it looks like we are getting our act together, and certainly they've kind of communicated that. And it's a big call, and they'll know it's a big call, and they'll know obviously how much the fans do love Neil. So you think, like, with all that in mind, you think they would factor all that in and like know whoever they go into a point. Not it's a sure bet because you never know in football. I mean, I know. You'll know this, Katherine, because Neil always loves to tell a little anecdote about how people go for a long-term manager instead of him. And then, he loves that one. But it's interesting. It's a really interesting time, I think. And obviously changes always happen at a football club, but I suppose you've got to look at it as change is quite exciting. We
no, it's great from a journalist point of view. It's great because doing this job, there is literally never a dull moment. There is always something going on. It's following the story and just waiting to see what happens next, and then calling a few people to account if it looks like it's not going right. So we try and kind of be very aware of how the fans are feeling about things. And we're in an incredibly fortunate position as journalists that you get to go and speak to the manager of a football club. You get to speak to the chief executive of a football club. They are sitting there right in front of you and you can ask them pretty much anything. And that's a hugely privileged position to be in. And that's kind of how I see it, that we are there to be nosy. We are there to represent the fans. We are there to try and ask the questions that people want asking and put them on the spot a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I have to say, I thought your line of questioning was very good at the presser. It's I enjoyed the responses. But yeah, I think I've peppered you enough for questions at this moment. We'll hear from the listeners as we kind of wrap up about Neil. So, Connor's question this week was obviously it's what has Neil Warnock's time at Huddersfield meant to you, his second spell? And as you can imagine, there was quite a few responses that were very positive. I'm going to read a couple out, and then I'm going to ask you yourself, Katherine, because you'll have a different take, which we always like. So, Lee Morris, he says, it's brought back my passion. It's been a throwback to what football used to be like and thoroughly enjoyable. I've never seen a manager unite a fan base instantly. And before anyone else says it, David Wagner wasn't instant. That's a very Lee Morris response as to getting something at the end. Adam Bell says, survival, absolutely dead and buried in February. It's been a joy to witness the calm, pragmatic, positive leadership over the past few months. Never panicked, even when the things were tough. Took on the pressure and did it all with a smile on his face. Big shoes to fill. And finally, Mark Harrison says, how you can have all the coaching badges in the world and sound tactics, but you also need to know how to get the best from individuals in order to have success. Warnock was born to be a football manager. Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, in terms of, I think this is the thing. I remember talking, because I'm sure you'll be aware as well, Katherine, but Huddersfield, from the out, as much as we love the club, I think certainly from a neutral perspective, there's not a lot of interest. And I think the thing for me was having Neil Warnock back as manager. I had so many more people asking me, like, "Oh, what's he doing? Like, what's he saying? How's it going?" And I think he brought. Like, I agree. I think for me, he really galvanised us and gave us someone to believe in. And Matt was talking about it on the pod the other day, and I remember the Watford game where we won 3-2 on Good Friday. And just his little wink to the camera when he's asked, what's the difference? And he's like, "Oh, it's about having a good manager." And it's just, I think there wasn't a lot to shout about last season, and not a lot of things to be positive about. And I think, he really brought that. And I'll be forever grateful to him as a Town fan. But Katherine, what did it mean to you? Obviously, we've talked about the pressers.
Yeah, I think you would just sum it up as he's box office. His box office is Neil Warnock. The amount of people who are interested in what he's got to say and how he behaves and the results that he's bringing in goes way beyond Huddersfield Town. And we see that with the interaction. If we post a little video on Twitter, or, you put interviews out there, people are fascinated by Neil Warnock, and he is thoroughly entertaining. And in a world... These days, you can speak to a lot of footballers and a lot of managers, and they are very, very wary of having an opinion, of being outspoken about things. I get that. I would say not so much local media, but national media. There is a bit of a perception that we're all there as journalists to catch you out, to hang you out to dry, and that has made people very cautious about what they say. The result of that is that it can get very, very boring because people are frightened to have an opinion. Neil Warnock is the polar opposite of that. Neil Warnock has absolutely no qualms whatsoever about saying exactly what he thinks, and that is utterly refreshing and very, very entertaining. And he's box office from the moment he took the job in the first place to then announcing that he was going to stay on. Even this week, the 50 minutes that we were in the press conference on Monday with him talking, he's an absolute showman. He loves it. He loves the limelight. He loves the questions. He loves the banter. He loves the back and forth with us as press, with fans, with players. And I think that's why part of the reason he's so successful on the pitch is it's the man management side of things. But the fact that he is an outspoken character, he knows absolutely how to play the game, play the media, to get the message out there that he wants to get across. Can ask him a question, he might well give you a completely different answer, but it means that he's got across what he wants to say. So that, I think, is how I will remember his time at Huddersfield Town, as just being a thoroughly entertaining person to deal with. Whatever you think of his style of football, as I say, he will always get that criticism of, is he a dinosaur? I disagree with that. I think there's far more to him than that. It's not just man management. There has got to be the tactics behind it as well. But yeah, I will miss him from an entertainment point of view, because we're all about BBC Radio Leeds. We're all about radio. We want to make good radio, and Neil Warnock 99.9% of the time makes great radio because he is just thoroughly engaging to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've covered a lot about Neil. We'll actually get onto the Coventry preview now. But before we go for the ad break, as always, we're sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. So if you are heading to the Coventry game, which we're going to preview shortly, you can order your drinks ahead of Monday if you head to magicrockbrewing.com and use our code AHTTC10. You can get 10% off all your online orders. So yeah, get it used, and we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and preview Coventry. Okay, so Katherine, we talked a lot about Neil, about the last night a little bit. We need to preview this Coventry game because on Monday, I suppose the interesting thing is we don't know. We don't know who's going to be in charge. So.
No, well, that's it. Should we just kind of leave a gap and then we can edit a name in afterwards? I don't quite know how this is going to work, because who knows? Honestly, there's been so many names linked with this job. It could be anybody who's been announced by the time we actually get to Monday night. So again, all I would say with that is that whoever it is, the eyes of the footballing world will be on this game on Monday night just to see who it is and how they get on first game in charge.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I suppose yeah, it's difficult to preview when you don't know who's going to be in charge. But we'll give it a go. I mean, I suppose the thing is, and I think it was Matty Pearson speaking to yourselves at Radio Leeds. He mentioned how he's had, what was it, 5 managers in the last 3 years?
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Do you think whoever comes in, it does seem like the long-term appointment? Do you think that stability is what Huddersfield need right now? Because there has been a lot of chop and change, hasn't there?
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, whoever gets the job, they've got to give them a fair crack of the whip with it, particularly bearing in mind, again, that it's going to be somebody coming in. They're inheriting someone else's team. How many transfer windows do you need before you can shape a team the way you want? Unless, you are walking into it going, I'm quite happy with that. But I don't think there's many managers that ever walk in and go, yeah, we don't need anybody else. It's perfect as it is. Happy days. They've got to be given some time. But football is a cutthroat world. So you can only hope that they come in, show signs of progress, start getting some results, move up the table, and then people can afford to be patient. But you just don't know, do you? I mean, what is stability in football these days? Honestly, if you get to the end of a season and it's still the same manager, you're doing well, quite frankly, because people seem to just it's chop and change all the time, isn't it? But there does come a point where you have to stick for a bit, even if initially it's looking a bit tricky. You've got to give people time, because otherwise it's just that ongoing merry-go-round. And how can you ever really make progress if you keep changing manager every 5 minutes? So let's hope whoever gets the job comes in, could see what they want to do with it, and they stick with it for a good stretch at least. I mean, you don't ever want it to become a position where it's looking completely untenable, at which point you've got to get rid. Hopefully that's not the case, and it can be steady away for Huddersfield Town for the rest of this season, and let whoever gets the job kind of get their ideas into practice, build a bit, have a couple of windows, and then they can really start to grow in the way that the club are really hoping that they will.
Definitely. And I mean, obviously the post-Neil Warnock era begins on Monday. It's live on Sky. I know you're covering the game, Katherine.
Yeah, don't be telling people that. Don't even listen to that. And plus, like, Sky, it annoys people. I know it annoys people who are of a Huddersfield Town persuasion, because you suddenly get people rocking up. We've seen them about once in the last 3 years. So all I can say on that front is, yeah, it might be on the telly, mute them and stick the radio on at the same time. But it's not Paul Ogden, actually. Oggy's off on Monday, but Matt Glennon will be there, and Jamie and myself at Coventry on Monday. So, and we're on all frequencies as well. I know that this drives people insane. I'm really sorry. I wish this was not the case. But rest assured, Monday night, that we are on all BBC Radio Leeds frequencies. So you'll be able to find us in all sorts of different ways, which is great.
Well, there you go. And obviously, Town are unbeaten in 3 matches heading into this one. And I was looking at the stats for Coventry. They've won just once in the last 6 league games. And they're actually below Town in the table. I had a quick look. And they haven't won at home since mid-August. I mean, whoever's in charge, how do you think about this one? Because Coventry, we know, obviously they made the playoff final last season, but they've had a bit of a stuttering start, not really got going. So is it a good kind of first game for whoever comes in on Monday?
I don't think it's an easy one. Coventry are a team, I think, in a bit of transition, because they came so close. I mean, Huddersfield Town fans have been there. You know what it's like to come within a whisker of getting promoted to the Premier League, and then it doesn't happen. And that can take a little bit of time to get over. Equally, they've had a big shift in terms of playing personnel, sold a couple of players for big money, which they do by the looks of it. I had a quick scan through their transfer business, and they have spent quite a lot of that, bringing in players. There's not that many players in the Championship that are making signings for like 9 million quid a pop, a good 4 or 5 million on a few others here or there. They have reinvested that money quickly to replace the players who have gone out. So I just feel for them, maybe it is a little bit of a period of transition, a little period of getting over that disappointment of missing out through the playoffs last season. But they do still have Mark Robbins in charge. They have. I mean, that if you wanted signs of stability, I think, is he the longest serving manager in the Championship now? Second longest?
I think you're right.
He's certainly right up there. He's been there a long time. And they've come through some real sticky patches, Coventry, but in terms of things off the pitch, which have been a nightmare. I mean, remember the start of last season where the pitch was an absolute joke and nobody could play on it for about the first 3 months. all the issues with the ground as well, playing in different places. So they've really stuck with Mark Robins through some very difficult times. And I do think he's a good manager, and a very underrated manager as well. So whoever gets the job, you want new manager bounce, don't you? That's the phrase we were looking for, new manager bounce. But it's not going to be easy away at Coventry, who have got some quality players, difficult place to go. I don't know, would you take a draw from that? I would say a draw away at Cov is probably a good result, although bearing in mind, as you say, they've had a bit of a tricky start to the season. So don't know on that one. But I'd be minded to think that a draw wouldn't be a bad result there.
No, I'm with you on that. I think whoever's in charge, I think, genuinely a point away from home is good going, I'd say. And particularly, let's be honest, if they, they said, obviously Jake Edwards said they hope to make an announcement by the end of this week. So whoever comes in, they're not going to have a lot of time. So I think
no, well, that's it, aren't they? It's literally, unless they've been sort of hiding around the back somewhere for the last 2 weeks, they're going to have next to no time to work with the players at all. So I wouldn't be expecting any kind of revolution come Monday night. I think it'll be pretty much, you'd like to think, round pegs, round holes, steady away. Let's see what we can do, and then gradually, whoever that gets the job can start to work on it and bring in their own ideas in the coming months. But yeah, a steady away performance on a Monday night would be probably the best thing, I think, at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, from you covering the games and attending the pre and post match stuff, I mean, we've seen with Town, they bring in people, sometimes with not a lot of time between games. When you're at those press conferences, and obviously it's like a short turnaround, we know the Championship. I mean, let's be honest, it feels like there's a game every 2 days.
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything different? Can you sense that kind of, because obviously we saw with Chicho stuff, like when, we were changing managers a bit last season. Do you feel, I suppose the chaos really, does that come across in those press conferences?
It can do a little bit. I'm assuming, and this is a big assumption, we're talking on Thursday morning. We're kind of expecting new manager announcement Friday at some point, press conference Friday. And then the questions will be, hopefully not first, who are you? Hopefully somebody we all know who it is. And then it will be just kind of trying to get out of whoever it is a little bit more about what their plans are, why they've taken the job, how they see this squad, what it's capable of, how they feel about following in the footsteps of Neil Warnock. And there is always a bit of a buzz, in the same way that a load of people were there on Monday to say goodbye to Neil Warnock or find out that he was confirming he was heading off. It will probably be the same with this new one as well. There will be quite a good number of people there, because there's just an awful lot of questions to ask at this stage. Say, in the immediate term, what are you going to do for Coventry away on Monday? And then bigger picture, how is this going to work over the next 3 years, hopefully, to get the club back in the Premier League? How are you going to make that happen? So, yeah, it will be, again, another interesting press conference if it happens tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday or whatever it is. But you'd imagine sooner rather than later, at least.
Yeah, that really makes me laugh. You've just reminded me actually about, I think it was in the pre-match with Neil. Obviously, everyone's asking questions about him, and it'll be the same with the new manager. And then I think it was Stephen Chicken was just like, I'm probably the only one who cares about the injury news.
Yeah, you just sort of have to throw that in as well. Oh, by the way, who's fit? Is Jonathan Hogg going to be fit for Monday night? You kind of have to throw that in there as well. So, yeah, it is very much balancing the here and now and then the bigger picture. And I'm hoping that whoever takes the job on, it will be another opportunity. I would like to think that somebody from the board will be there as well. I would expect Jake Edwards would probably be there as well to field a few more questions, because it would be nice to hear a little bit more from him about what the big picture plan is going forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose it's an interesting one for you to chat to whoever the new person's going to be, because I feel like, like you say, it's a lot of pressure. I almost feel like you want to be the, I know they're bringing in someone long term, but you almost want to, it's, I'm not comparing it in the same way of like a Wenger or Ferguson, but you almost want to be the person after the person, like, so someone else can be in between. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, very much so. And they'll inevitably asked about that. It is such a tough act to follow. So what makes you think that you are the right person to follow on from Neil Warnock? I'll also be really interested from the point of view of who it is, because Neil Warnock a few times this week has said, they've not told me who it is. I've got no idea. I've not been involved in the recruitment of this process. It might be somebody I don't like. And you're like, okay, so who might fall into that bracket of people that Neil Warnock does not like? I'm hoping it's not. It's just the not knowing, isn't it? Because it could be anybody. It could be, you sort of, your obvious choices of a Darren Moore. That seems kind of a logical one. Or it could be something absolutely left field that comes from nowhere, in the same way that the Mark Fotheringham thing came from nowhere. And then everybody's frantically on Google going, who's this bloke? So hopefully it will at least be somebody that is a name, and then we can try and pick up from there and say, right, okay, well, over to you. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and I feel like we've not done a lot of Coventry in this, but obviously.
No, sorry, Coventry.
No, it's fine. I mean, you touched on Mark Robins. Obviously, you're familiar with Mark. I mean, show us a little bit of what it was like when, I know it's a few years back now when he was at Town, but what's your kind of experience with him?
Oh, wow. The thing I'll always, I suppose, as much as anything, remember with Mark Robins was when he got sacked. Because that again was an absolute bolt out of the blue. I think that what was it, after the first game of the season, heavy defeat, and suddenly you're getting a phone call on a Sunday morning going, right, there's an announcement coming. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I just sat down and got some toast on the go. How is this happening one game into the season? So that will always stick in the memory of the ruthless cull, because that was completely out of the blue. In terms of Mark Robins as a person, as I said before, I think he's a hugely underrated manager. He's clearly had a really successful time at Coventry. They continue to stick with him. They've got a lot of faith that he will be the person that ultimately gets Coventry back into the top flight. To deal with him on a personal level, very dry sense of humour, very tell it like it is. I think if you asked him a stupid question, he would turn around and say, that's a stupid question. He's not going to kind of dress it up at all. But yeah, a decent bloke to deal with. And as I say, a very dry sense of humour as well. So if you could kind of work out how to take him, that took a little bit of getting used to. But nothing but good things to say about him, really. And it would have been interesting to see how his time at Huddersfield Town had panned out if he'd been stuck with a little bit longer. But again, sliding doors moments, isn't it? He's gone on to other things and he's doing a good job at Coventry.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Coventry fans absolutely love him. And I know as much because Tom, although he's not here, for our fan phone in, he did manage to squeeze that in. So he caught up with one of the lads from Sky Blues Extra, the Coventry City fan pod, and here's what they had to say.
So as you know, Tom normally speaks to the fans, and I did say in the pod, oh, Tom, here's Tom speaking to a fan earlier, but oh, I'm Tom. I'm in Germany. I've got to do work. Oh, I can't be on a podcast talking about Coventry. Oh. Anyway, I'm going to try and do an impression of Tom talking to our fan. So here we go.
Hiya, mate. Thanks for joining us. So what are your thoughts on last season?
Thoughts on last season? Well, it was a rollercoaster on and off the pitch, and with the pitch as well, which caused all sorts of issues. Bottom in October, one win from first 10 games or so. Things were looking pretty bleak. Small squad, very little depth, injuries to key players. Yet the king, Mark Robins, somehow took us into the playoffs for our first ever championship playoff campaign, and to the playoff final, where unfortunately we obviously lost out on a penalty shootout to Luton Town. So a heartbreaking end, a tremendous surge, especially in the second half of the season after a dismal start. But all in all, it was a season to remember, and so many highlights and so many memories created.
I've already done one impression. I feel bad. Okay, I'm just going to ask these normally. So, did the loss in the final affect your start to this season at all?
The loss in the playoff final obviously was an incredibly bitter pill to swallow. And do I think it's affected the start of the season? I do, because we were always scheduled to have a big rebuild, whether we had not gotten the playoffs at all, whether we'd won the playoffs and we're in the Premier League right now, or whether what did happen, and we lose in the playoff final. We had a lot of deadwood out of contract, but it's affected our start to the season because the defeat ultimately has seen us lose our two best players in Victor Gyökeres and Gustavo Hamer, arguably, in my opinion, two of the best players in the league last season. Similar to Huddersfield, when you lost in the playoff final to Nottingham Forest, Toffolo and O'Brien were sort of pinched, and you do feel the effects because you've got to replace, and not only have we got to try and replace them as best we can, we also had so many loan players go back and sort of other players out of contract who we released, and we had to try and bring a whole load of new players in and bed them in, and it's obviously, it has affected the start of this season. There's no two ways about it. Not making excuses. The manager, Mark Robbins, won't make excuses, but it is a long season, and it's just going to unfortunately take a bit of pain in the short term for ultimately what I think will be long-term gain.
Of course, Coventry have spent quite a bit of money this summer compared to what you normally do. So what are your thoughts on the summer transfer window for the Sky Blues?
Thoughts on the summer transfer market in terms of outgoings, inevitable and disappointing in terms of it was inevitable that Victor Gyökeres was going to go. We got a tremendous fee for him. Gustavo Hamer was more disappointing. I think there was a consensus and feeling amongst the Sky Blue Army that he could sign a new deal because he really genuinely seems to love the club and love the area. But alas, the bright lights of the Premier League and Sheffield United sort of coming in meant that we accepted around £15 million for him. So in terms of the personnel that we lost in those two players, huge blow. But the money that we brought in, £35 million for two players who cost us a combined £2.5 million, is a really good return. And we have reinvested, over £20 million of that. Haji Wright, a new club record signing for 7.7 million. Ellis Sims, 3.5. Rising. Milan van Eyck from Herenveen for 3.5 million. Liam Kitching, Barnsley's captain, for 4 million. There are, some highlights around Bobby Thomas, another centre back for a couple of million. There's a lot of big signings. And overall, I think everyone was very, very excited. We didn't bring in a central midfielder. That is a big blow. We didn't replace Hamer. So that's going to have to be done in January. But we've got what we have now until then, and we've got to make the most of it. So all in all, yeah, I am happy with the transfer market. I'd probably give it, like a base of what I've seen so far, probably a 7 out of 10. I think, you don't want to lose your best players. I think had we brought in a replacement for Hamer, and if I'd seen a bit more from our new signing so far, that score would be higher. But I certainly think there's reasons to be optimistic moving forward to the rest of the season.
Interesting. And who would you say your favourite player so far this season is?
Favourite player so far this season? Tough one. It's difficult to look past sort of our veteran, and long-term striker, Matty Godden, who's had a tremendous start, 5 league goals in 7 league games so far this season. But I also have been mightily impressed with our new right wing-back, Milan van Eyck, who's got tremendous pace, tremendous energy, and I think he's shown in glimpses that he's potentially going to be our next sort of potentially one of our big assets moving forward. And our youngster who we got on loan from Brighton, Yassin Iyari, he also showed glimpses that he's going to be a really good player. I wouldn't say there's been a standout candidate, unfortunately, and I think our results reflect that. But I think it's a matter of time before some of the new players really sort of step up to the mantle. But yeah, in terms of so far, our current crop of players, it's hard to look past our top scorer and joint top scorer in the league, in Matty Godden.
It's a question we ask to all our fellow fan podcasts, especially when we're playing an away game. What are the best pubs if away fans are going on Monday? What would you recommend?
Now, here's a good question. What pubs to visit on Monday? Well, it depends what time you're getting into Coventry. If you've got a chance to go to the city centre, which is about 4.5 miles from the ground, there's a couple of really nice pubs. There's the Golden Cross, very old pub near the old and new cathedrals. You've then obviously got the modern day delights of your Wetherspoons, but there's Dylan's Spire Bar as well. amongst many others in the city centre, the Town Wall Tavern, the Gate House. Yeah, there's lots and lots of places. If getting to the ground is going to be the main thing, then there's the Anecdote at the ground. There is some pubs along Longford Road, and I believe there's an away sort of fans friendly pub there. There's also Dillon's Brewery, which I've seen visiting supporters at as well, which is just behind this, at the back of it, an industrial estate near the ground, which has become home fans' sort of favourite place to go. So yeah, there's places that you better grab a drink depending on what time you get there, and of course in the ground itself there will be obviously drinks available there.
And finally, I know everyone hates doing these, us included, but what's your score prediction for the game on Monday?
Score prediction for Monday. Well, after what has been a less than inspiring start for the Sky Blues, there's a bit of pressure on this game back at home after back-to-back away games where we only managed to get 1 point from 6. We are unbeaten at home this season at the CBS, and I think that will continue. I think a response is needed, particularly after our dismal performance away at Cardiff, and I fancy one of our new strikers to get up and running, so I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to Coventry, perhaps with Ellis Sims or Haji Wright getting a goal on the night. It's not going to be an easy game. I think the change of manager might work in our favour, actually, this time. And yes, we need a win, and I think it's, from our point of view, it's the perfect opportunity to try and sort of just calm some of our fans down, get another win on the board and know that, okay, everything's going to be all right. We just need to be a bit patient, and we're going to get there.
Okay, so we've heard from the Coventry fan there. Interesting one. I mean, with this, like I say, I think the reason we've kind of changed the format of this normally is because there's so many unanswered questions going into Monday. So I suppose really, how you kind of seeing this one? There's so many unanswered questions.
Yeah, I think for whoever comes in, you're on a kind of, you can't lose really either way, can you? I mean, obviously you can lose in the literal sense of the word. I think if you come in as a new manager literally 2 days before a game, you've got so little time to work with your players to get your ideas in place that if it comes away and Huddersfield Town lose on Monday night, everybody kind of shrugs their shoulders and go, well, they've had a bit of a hard... It's hard to come in at such short notice and start to make changes. If they win, brilliant, you're off on the best possible footing. Everybody immediately is like, great, that's a really positive start and we can build from there. So whoever it is, they can't really lose either way, I don't think. But it would be nice to, I think, just at least get a bit of a sense of how they're going to go about things. Don't know. I mean, can you read much into somebody's managerial approach from one game at such short notice? I don't know, but you'd like to think, if nothing else, go to Coventry and give it a good go. Let's see what happens. Go over there and try and put them under a little bit of pressure, because Huddersfield Town do have some real quality players. You don't need to be afraid of going to places like Coventry. That was Neil Warnock's big thing. This squad is capable of getting results against anybody, and they've been good away from home as well. So why not? Why not go and give Cov a good go in and see what they can come away with. And if it doesn't work and it does end in defeat, onwards and upwards, kind of draw a line under it. And then once they've had a bit more time, whoever the new manager is can hopefully work their magic and get the best out of the squad.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I know we're talking about the one of the best managers in town history, so maybe it's not a good comparison, but I always think with David Wagner, when he came in and those first 2 games, even though we lost, you could really see clearly what we were trying to do. And I think, it is asking a lot, because let's say the person's announced on Friday. Obviously, that's only a couple of days to work with the squad. But, I suppose that's it, isn't it? Like you say, you could spin it out. The result is almost doesn't really matter, because I think you can spin it either way, can't you? Which is probably why a good thing that we do match predictions, because I will ask you to predict the score for this one. Thinking. so many variables.
No, it's really hard. New
Yeah.
manager comes in and puts like 11 men behind the ball, and then he's got 0-0 all over it, hasn't it? I think it'll be a draw. I'm going to go a scoring draw. I think it might be a repeat of the Stoke result. I'm going to go 2-2. I think. I'm notoriously terrible at this, by the way, so don't read anything into this score prediction. In fact, I would go for the polar opposite of whatever the opposite of 2-2 is, because I am terrible at predictions. But I think if they can come away with a point away at Coventry, I think that would be a good start and something to build on.
Oh, and we do have a little, we're not good at predictions either, but we do have a little spreadsheet, so we'll announce the winner. So you get a bonus point if you get a correct goal scorer. So if you predicted 2, who are you going to go for?
I'm going to go Rodoni again. I'm so pleased for him that he finally seems to be hitting the back of the net after that long, lean spell where it seemed like no matter what he did, it was not going in the back of the net. So hopefully that continues. I'm going to go Rodoni, and I don't know. Do we go with one of the defenders maybe again? Similar. I think, similar to Stoke, maybe a Pierce or a Helix, somebody like that.
Yeah, I think that. I'm also going to go for a draw, but I think, in very typical Town fashion, I think we'll have the announcement. Obviously, you're covering it on radio. It's going to be on TV, and I feel like there'll be a lot of build-up, and I think it's going to be 0-0.
Yeah, isn't that always the way? It's like Sky big up there, big Super Sunday, woo, bells and whistles, and then it's like 2 terrible 0-0 draws. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, you could well be right, but no, I'm going to at least hopefully a scoring draw. Goals are what we like.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for your sake as well, because you're covering the game. At least there's something interesting to talk about in the game, because there's nothing worse, is there?
Yeah, there's 0-0 draws and 0-0 draws. My big hope for Monday night is that the technical gods at Coventry are not always on our side.
Okay.
I've had recent experience of Coventry, which I'm still having therapy for these days, where things just do not work. They've got a very different kind of infrastructure setup. I'm sorry, this is very boring behind the scenes geekery, but they do have very different kind of broadcasting setup to a lot of other grounds, which means that we have to take different bits of kit with us. We have to kind of sync things up in slightly different ways, and then we turn up and we pray that it all works. Rest assured, I'm putting this out here now. If anything does not work on Monday night and we drop off the air, it will not be our fault, because we'll be there in about 5 hours in advance of kickoff to make sure that everything works. But I've had some slightly hair-raising experiences at Coventry where I've kind of been midway through games and things are not working, and you've had to hot foot it out to the car park to get another bit of kit and hot foot it back again and try and plug it all in. All meanwhile that poor old Matt and Oggy are desperately trying to kind of keep everything flowing and describing the action while there's all this chaos breaking out in the background. But fingers crossed anyway for Monday night that the technical gods are on our side.
Well, yeah, here's hoping all the drama's on the pitch rather than off it.
Let's hope so.
But before we just go, obviously we're going to close out, but it is time for the mailbag. So we've got 2 questions here. We'll keep it short. So the first one is from Guy Bradley. He asks, we're still talking about Warnock here. I suppose this is a good way to close the Warnock chat, but he says, Neil obviously has a reputation for long ball football, which I've always disagreed with until last night. Do you think he made them hoof it forward every time on purpose, as kind of, if you think I play like that, I'll show you what it really looks like? I did notice that, actually, now that Guy said it. I think, there was a lot of launch in it, but to be honest, I think Stoke were they were quite good, actually. I think we were lucky in the first half, as I mentioned. So, I don't know. What do you think, Katherine? Because I think Neil does have a reputation for, dinosaur football, if you like, and Route 1. But I don't think we've seen that at Town at all, really. I think we've seen a lot of different styles.
I think that does him a bit of a disservice, to be honest. I think he thinks that does him a bit of a disservice too. I think he's astute enough to recognise which teams that tactic actually might bear fruit and which teams that you just on a hide into nothing if you just launch it forward. If you're playing against I'm trying to think, teams that I've seen this season, West Brom, for example, they're an enormous team. They've got, so what is the point of launching it forward to try and get a Josh Koroma or a Jack Rodoni on the end of it when they're quite clearly going to have trouble against 6'9" defenders? It's not going to work. And Neil Warnock is no mug. He doesn't get the results that he gets by just hoofing it forward because It clearly doesn't work against some opponents. And equally, if you just do that every single game, then the opposition manager is going to know, well, that's how they play, so that's how we defend against them. So, no, I think maybe at times, yes, you will see that from a Neil Warnock side, but I don't think it would be fair to say that you see that all the time. And I think he would say as much himself. He very much takes exception to the dinosaur tag that he gets branded with. Laughs about it, but he's very much like, no, there's more to me than that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I think he gets lumped in with the kind of old school British managers, and obviously there's similarities there. But I think the reason Neil is still getting results even at the age he is because he can adapt, whereas maybe some of the other managers haven't. I think we've actually seen, in my opinion, I think we've seen under Neil a lot more kind of attacking football this season. Last season was kind of just need to get the results, and maybe some of the play wasn't the best. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think he is get it forward, as the Yorkshire people would say. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so our last question, this is kind of touching on the new one, and I suppose we've kind of talked about this a fair bit. But Scott asks, do we think the new manager, whoever that is, will be able to get more out of the squad we have than Neil did? Scott isn't so sure. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be really interesting because Neil Warnock has got a tune out of players that you really thought, I think their time at Huddersfield Town might be numbered. And you see, again, we're in a very privileged position in that the club are very good at this, giving us access to the players as well as to the manager. That is not the case for everybody. Let me reiterate that point. So you can talk to the players and ask them about their relationship that they have with somebody like Neil Warnock. It's been put to pretty much every player that we've spoken to over the course of his time at Huddersfield Town. What is it about Neil Warnock? And they're absolutely just full of praise for him as a person, that training is fun, that he gets the best out of them. Players like you, Josh Koroma, putting all that faith in Radoni, very publicly has bigged him up, has given him all kinds of credit. Players like Josh Ruffles, who's come back that had been written off by others, who Neil Warnock can't speak highly enough of. And then, of course, he has his favourites, doesn't he? Danny Ward, he jokes himself that everybody thinks that Danny Ward is his son. Players like that, Jonathan Hogg, they all speak in such glowing terms about Neil Warnock and the relationship they have with him as a man manager. And I think that above everything else is going to be a big and a tough act to follow for whoever comes in next. Because how do you go from playing for a guy that you've got huge respect for, you have a laugh with, you think is good fun, and then it's like, oh, okay, right, so who's this new guy? What are you all about? Are we going to have that same rapport? Is he going to have that same belief in me, that same faith in me? Now, I'm sure that for others who maybe not been in Neil Warnock's plans quite so much might be looking at it and going, great, this is a new opportunity for me now to kind of stake my claim, to get myself back in the picture a little bit more. But for those who really did have that rapport with Warnock, that's going to be the big ask for the next guy. It's like, can you do the same? Can you get the best out of those players in the same way that Neil Warnock did? Albeit in a different style, because there is only one Neil Warnock, really. You can't see many other managers operating in the same way, but can that man management side of things be carried through? And some of the names in the frame, you think, yeah, I can see that. And some of the names that I've heard mentioned, I've thought, oh, that could be interesting. So, yeah, it's going to be a big shift for everybody, and particularly the players, and kind of how they react to whoever it is that comes through the door. At the very least, hopefully it's somebody they go, right, I get that. I respect this person. Let's see what they're going to bring to the party. What you don't want is them going, who's this guy then? Which has happened before.
Yeah, I think the thing is, for whoever comes in, like, it's maybe not trying to you have to do it your own way. I know that's an easier thing to say, but if you're going to try and compare yourself and do similar to what Neil did, that's not going to work. But I suppose, let's be honest, I think the fans are a little bit nervous, because like I say, it's the club has said they're doing it from a position of strength rather than like having to bring someone in to fix the problem. So it'll be an interesting one. I suppose the thing you could say, and cards on the table, I think I've said this on the podcast before, I wasn't particularly super keen to get Neil for another season. Not that he didn't do a fantastic job, but I think it just kind of kicks the can down the road. And, obviously it doesn't matter now because they've done it 7 games in. But I suppose the positives you can look at, maybe is obviously the ownership have kind of made it clear that, not that there's loads of money available this season, but there is some. And I know obviously the chat was all about a striker. Maybe whoever comes in now, they'll have a long time between now and the January transfer window to have a look at the squad and see what they need. And if we do have a long-term successor, I suppose you can say, look, if we've got a manager who signs a free 4-year deal, players might be more receptive to move. That's no disrespect to Neil, but, just playing, if I was a player, for example, am I going to want to sign for a manager who has a very clear style of play, who's only going to be here for a season, and then I don't know who's going to be the manager after that? So, maybe looking at it that way, we can kind of see, I suppose the question is he able to get more out of the squad? I think maybe if this is the long-term person, they're going to start letting them shape the squad how they want. So it's an interesting one. I suppose we'll just find out, won't we?
Yeah, that's it. Watch this space. That's all any of us can do at the moment. But as you say, I do think there is something in that, absolutely, that if you're a player, when the next opportunity comes around in January, and you can look at it and go, right, this is the person that's in charge. This is the way they play. They're going to be here for the foreseeable, you would like to think. It is easier to kind of make that switch on good faith, thinking, yeah, I can fit into this person's plans, rather than thinking, okay, well, this is only a short-term thing. What's the next person going to think about me, and that kind of thing. So hopefully it will work in their advantage further down the line. But yeah, at the moment, it'll just be, right, come in, this is the squad you've got. What can you do with them? And say Neil Warnock's really got a tune out of a lot of these players. Hopefully the next person can do exactly the same.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we'll end it there. And I really look forward to the second this goes out. Huddersfield have announced the manager, and this is all.
I know, exactly. It's going to be valid for approximately half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. But no, Katherine, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks to everyone for listening, and thanks to our sponsors, Magic Rock, as always. We will be back to preview the next game. The lads will also be reviewing the Coventry game. I think they're in talks about a live show or whatever, but it will be covered. And I think we'll leave it there. So ta-ta for now, and up the town.